I want to start with one in particular. We have Lamine Yamal, the Barcelona winger, obviously needs no introduction, who has had a fantastic weekend as Barcelona beat Atletico Madrid in La Liga. And we had one user take take offense at the fact that Lamine Yamal is having to share the title of most valuable player in the world with Erling Haaland and Kylian Mbappe. So for anyone who doesn't know, all three players have a market value of 200 million euros. And this user, Manu, says, I don't understand how there can be two guys tied in market value with this kid. This kid, talked about Lamine Yamal, gives you goals, he gives you assists, he gives you magic. He makes you jump out of your seat every time he gets the ball because you're always waiting for him to do something new. And the whole crowd is mesmerized when he touches it. He creates unique opportunities. And what do the other two give you? Goals and more goals. That's it. So I think we can
How's that
probably
different from Lamine Yamal?
I think we can probably go out or stick our neck out here and see that this user is obviously perhaps a Barcelona fan, maybe a Spain fan in particular. But, I have some sympathy with what he's saying here. Lamine Yamal is an exciting player. Anyone who's seen the clip of his nutmeg against Atletico Madrid defender this weekend, if you haven't, it's definitely worth looking up because it is a wonderful piece of magic. And then he plays a wonderful through ball to the outside of his foot. And I must admit, it was very reminiscent of Lionel Messi, that little bit of magic. And Manu, we've obviously seen Lamine Yamal do incredible things already in his career for both Barcelona and Spain. But, that talking point of how does he pull away from Mbappe and Haaland? Let's take it at face value. We're talking about a player here. Now, the fact he's worth 200 million euros on Transfermarkt in itself is incredible. And for the player that he is and for the age he is incredible. But how do you think he could potentially, or do you think it's possible for him to pull away from both Haaland and Mbappe in terms of his market value in let's say in 2026?
I mean, 200 million is such a high figure. It's one that we touch with such care now, right? Because we don't see these, while we see more transfers in the 50 to 100 million euro range than we ever seen before. No one has ever really touched 200 million or 222 million since Neymar, right? And that was because the exit clause and there was extraordinary circumstances and all that. But, that figure hasn't really been reached since. I think there's also a lot of recency bias here when you look at Lamine Yamal, and I don't want to downplay him at all. I think I've seen him live in stadium play for Spain, and I think he's a fabulous player. But I also seen Kylian Mbappe play live at the 2018 World Cup final, where he won. and I think that is maybe something that we have to remember about Kylian Mbappe. He has led his country not to one, but two World Cup finals. And has won one of them and probably should have won the other as well, right? If it hadn't been for an incredible miss in extra time, he would have been a 2 times World Cup winner before 30. There's not many players in the world that have done that. I think the only other one who has done that is Pelé. So just, this is what we were talking about here when we're talking about Kylian Mbappe. I know he has his critics. I know people like to downplay him at times. I know his move to Real Madrid hasn't come to full fruition yet, but it's still Kylian Mbappe, right? So when he was talking about, that's magic, who gets you out of your seat, who does these incredible things, you might as well also talk about Mbappe here, right? I think we're so used to him now that we forget what an incredible player he is at times. And so I'm not saying Lamine Yamal is not that, but I don't think Mbappe should not be a 200 million euro player, right? And then Erling Haaland, you and I both have been lucky enough to see him live many times in stadium. He's a force of nature. He guarantees you goals. In a game where goals are a rarity, he can single-handedly provide them at a fit of a moment. And that is something so incredibly rare at this time and age, especially in an age where there's no number 9s. So I understand the sentiment, but I also think it's unfair towards the other 2 guys.
I think it's a very interesting discussion because you could definitely point to moments this season where both Mbappe and Haaland haven't been quite themselves. Mbappe's had his injuries. There's this whole shenanigans about the wrong leg getting scanned with his injury for Real
Incredible
Madrid.
story.
Definitely worth looking up if you're not quite sure what we're discussing there or referencing there. So, Mbappe's had his ups and downs at Real Madrid since moving there. Haaland, who undoubtedly put Liverpool to the sword in the FA Cup this weekend, came out and said after the game, look, I know I've not been my best this season. I know I need to improve. So both those players would probably see themselves as not having the best seasons, while maybe Lamine Yamal is having, an outstanding season for Barcelona. So I think, as you said, Manu, it's recency bias, and we can't just kind of we don't change market values from one weekend to the next, and that's exactly why we don't, because then, the market values would just swing wildly up and down.
Yeah.
But if we kind of want to extend that time period over the course of now towards the end of 2026, and if I wanted to kind of, if I was Lamine Yamal or his agent or Barcelona or whatever, and I was thinking, how do I make him the most valuable player in the world? I think you would be looking at how he can differentiate himself from both Mbappe and Erling Haaland. And he can do that in two ways, in my opinion. He can win the Champions League with Barcelona, which is a very obvious thing to do. And then, of course, he can then go on and win the World Cup with Spain. And he's in a fantastic position to do both of those things, in the sense that he plays for a fantastic club with fantastic, talented players, both for club and country. And he's a leader for both of those teams. So, you just discussed about how Mbappe winning the World Cup with France is what kind of introduced him to the world. And of course, when Lamine Yamal won the Euros is exactly what helped kind of really bump up his market value. And the thing that I think is really exciting is that all three of these players will be at the World Cup. Obviously, it's less likely that Norway are going to go win the World Cup than France or Spain, but they'll all most likely be expected to shine and perform for their countries. And not to mention the Champions League as well, where all three clubs and all three players, are in contention. So if we want to see some sort of break in that deadlock between those three players, I think, man, it'll come in the Champions League, and I think it'll come in the World Cup this year. And then I guess, as an extension, the Ballon d'Or will then be awarded to whoever of those three players does the best in those two competitions.
Yeah, no, I think the World Cup and the Champions League, I mean, you have to remember too, Haaland has won a Champions League with Man City. But, as you were talking, I also went through their stats. And Lamine Yamal has 21 goals and 16 assists, so 37 scorer points over 41 games. Erling Haaland, in an off year, right? Is having an off year. He has 33 goals and 7 assists, which is 40 scorer points, which is more than Lamine Yamal. And Kylian Mbappe, despite being diagnosed on the wrong leg, he has, in 36 games, he has 38 goals and 6 assists. That is an incredible number. So, that is incredible. He's currently scoring every 78 minutes. And he's only still 27. So I'm sorry, user, but these guys, Lamine Yamal isn't at that same level yet.
Yeah, well, that's why. I mean, obviously, you could argue he's not a striker like the other two, so maybe he doesn't get the goals as well. But that's why I'm saying it will come down to which of these three players guides their teams to the most success. It won't really come down to most goals or assists at the end of the season.